Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 299, and today's date is February 25th, 2014, and the title of this episode is High Probability of a Major Event with Syria. Because what do we know? We understand that the central bankers, the United States government, along with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other private Western central bank nations, all have the same goal. They want to get into Syria, remove the government, and replace that entire country on the private Western central bank system and sell all their natural resources using the US dollar, and then they would like to move into Iran and do the same thing. And we're seeing them doing this all across the entire globe at this point. Some successful, some aren't successful, but as the central bankers, the U.S. government, continually spread across the globe, the forces are getting thinner and thinner, very hard to maintain what is going on here, and we can see that they are ramping all of this up, and we can see they are back on the same track with Syria, and it looks like something is definitely going to happen, and we're going to discuss that a little bit later in this report. But let's get into the economic collapse news. We're going to head out to Canada right now, and what we're seeing right now in Canada is they're having the same problem as everyone else. Their housing market is in a total bubble, and right now the Canadian housing market is looking like it's going to fade out and crash. 16 forecasters, 8 said they were slightly concerned that after more than a decade of rapid increases in home prices, they may be at risk of a sharp fall. Canada's largest bank said they were concerned, while 3 said they were very concerned. Still, of course, the government officials and everyone else who's out there, they're saying, no, we think housing prices are going to rise. We believe that everything will be okay. But then again, we heard this back in 2008, of course, in the United States, when the Fed was out there and all the other countries are following along, that everything was fine. There is no recession coming up. Look away from this area, but we know better. They never tell you the truth. They always tell you the opposite of what is happening. And we can see by looking all around the world, the entire system is imploding on itself, and they do not know what to do. They don't know how to get out of this. So what they continually do is they try to push the private Western central banking debt across the world by invading other nations, maybe not using their own forces like the United States Army or the EU armed forces. They use agent provocateurs to help out. They pay for mercenaries, they pay for rebels, and they create these groups. And of course, all this money that they're paying comes from different locations. One could be like Afghanistan, the opium fields, the poppy fields, which they sell for opium, and this is how they use the money in these other areas. And of course, we're seeing what's happening in the Ukraine, the EU. I'm sure all the central bankers are patting themselves on the back going, yes, we have the Ukraine, it is ours, but it really isn't. But of course, they think they're done. They think they have it all in the bag. They think everything's going to be fine because they're pushing the debt further and further out into other countries. So of course, since they believe that they have the Ukraine and they're going to put them on the EU system, they're already coming out with forecasts saying everything is great. Spain's economy is going to grow 1% in 2014. How is this possibly going to happen? I don't know, but they're coming out with these amazing forecasts that things are just going to all of a sudden get better. Unemployment's just going to disappear, and they're just going to start producing manufacturing, even though the country is weighed down with billions and billions of dollars worth of debt. The people are not working. The youth of the country are not working, but just somehow it's all going to get better. And of course, they're out there saying the worst may be behind us. The Eurozone growth outlook raised slightly to 1.2% for 2014. And they're saying that the in the high debt and high unemployment will continue to stall the recovery in the 18-member Eurozone, but they believe that the Eurozone GDP will grow by 1.2% in 2014 because they think they've gotten into the Ukraine, and they're trying to spread this out to other countries, that they're doing what they need to do to keep this system propped up. But we know This is not going to work. And they also go on to say that we understand that the unemployment is around 12.2%, and we feel that the unemployment levels across the Eurozone is going to fall to 12% in the coming year. And sovereign debt will inch up to 95.9% of GDP. So debt's going to go up, unemployment's going to come down, and they're just going to all start manufacturing and sell their products to who? And they're making everyone, and they're using this propaganda to make them believe that things are going to be okay. And we know better than this. We know that the entire system is imploding. We know that they don't have the Ukraine. We understand that Russia is moving into the Crimea area, and they will never get the south and the east portion of the Ukraine. All they have is Kiev, and they're trying to rewrite all the laws. They're trying to create a whole new constitution. They're trying to put the entire system on the EU, and this is why they're rushing. They're supposed to have elections today, but these were put off right now because they're having quite a bit of problems there because basically the country's broke. But let's go further into the economic news here. Now, in the United States, what we're seeing is the housing market has not been doing well at all. And we understand that the government officials, the Fed, they're all out there telling us how the housing market is rebounding, it's recovering, it's incredible, it's a miracle. And again, President was out there in August of 2013 in Arizona telling everyone we're in a recovery. The State of the Union, he's telling you how housing rebounded and we're in a recovery. Well, I hate to say it, they're lying. It's the complete opposite of what they're saying. And right now, the Case-Shiller, they've come out and they're saying it's warning us that the housing market looks terrible. This cannot be sustained. It will not be sustained. It will come crashing down. And of course, we understand that housing has been declining. Mortgage applications have been declining. Prices have been falling. New home builders they're saying there's less traffic. And we understand that the major mortgage companies, those departments, started laying off in September and October. It was very quiet because they understood that this housing market was a complete illusion. It is not real. And of course, they're going to keep continually going on saying that everything's fine. It's the weather. That's why people aren't buying homes. What's going to happen when spring comes and the housing market continually falls? It's not going to get better because we have to understand the facts. The facts are unemployment is not 6.6%. Unemployment is closer to 30%, depending on the calculation. There was an executive on Wall Street who said it was around 37%. The youth of America cannot afford these homes. Most of them are unemployed. The unemployment for the youths is between 40 and 50%. Most of these people coming out of college can't find work in their field, so they're taking part-time jobs. They're living with their parents till they're 35. The government has been restructuring the student loans because they realize these people can't pay this back because they don't have work. Since these people don't have work, they don't have disposable income. Since they don't have disposable income, guess what? Retail sales are imploding because they're not going out buying goods. They can't go out and buy a house because they don't have the income to buy it. And this is why we see all the banks coming out with 100% financing, reverting back to adjustable rate mortgages, and even going into the subprime market because they realize they need to do everything they possibly can to keep this housing market going. And we also have to understand those people who've owned homes have bad credit. Think about the amount of foreclosures and the amount of short sales. This is why the Fed has been purchasing all of this toxic real estate from the banks. $40 to $45 billion a month. Yes, they've been tapering a little bit back, but they're still purchasing this garbage. Most of these people now have been laid off. They don't have good credit, and they're just trying to survive. This is what we are seeing right now, and these are the facts. So the housing market cannot get any better. And we also have to understand that most of the purchases are in cash from hedge funds and investors. They have been purchasing, trying to rent out these homes, and now we're seeing that they're having problems renting them, and they're trying to unload them, and they're trying to sell these houses, and there's no one there to buy them, and they don't know what to do. So what are we seeing? Well, they keep telling us that the job market is getting better. They're telling us that their unemployment's coming down, but all I see is a huge amount of layoffs. I mean, we've seen Barclays, thousands of people, RBS, 30,000 people, Dell, 15,000 people, Macy's, 2,500 people, closing 5 stores. JCPenney closing 33 stores, laying off like 3,000 people. We see IBM laying off people. They're starting to lay off people tomorrow, February 26th. 13,000 layoffs. They're calling it Project Apollo. I mean, when you give a layoff thing a name, this is huge. And of course, they're calling it rebalancing it. Let me tell you what it really is. We don't have a sales across the world. We are bloated with people. We got to let them go. That will save us a certain amount of money. We can get rid of their salaries. We can get rid of their benefits. And we can get rid of their retirement. And this will save the company a lot of money because we just don't have the sales. We saw the same thing with Caterpillar closing many factories, laying off between 30 and 40,000 people. And we're seeing this all over the place. Even in Newark, teachers are being laid off, and they're going to lay off about 1,000 teachers in Newark. And of course, J.P. Morgan, and I'm sure you all heard this, they are laying off people. Now we have to understand, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan, Citibank, Bank of America, 1-800 East Coast Mortgages laid off. I'm talking thousands. I'm not saying 1,000, 2,000. I'm talking 40, 50,000 people during the September to October timeframe because they realize the housing market is not going well. And right now, Jamie Dimon, he is focused on explaining to 8,000 J.P. Morgan workers why, after firing 16,500 people in consumer and mortgage banking, the bank will now let go another 2,000 and 6,000 in those same two groups. So they are laying off more people because they realize the housing market is done. They're trying to get rid of as many people as they possibly can, and we're going to see layoffs coming from many other financial institutions. And if you remember, we saw this back in 2008, early 2008, where companies started, and 2007 actually, where companies started laying off thousands upon thousands of people because they know that this market is about to collapse. They know that this system is coming to an end. They know because they have insider information directly to the Fed. They realize what is happening. I mean, George Soros right now has a $1.3 billion bet that this market is going down, and there's many other heavy investors that have a bet that the market's coming down because what's happening right now is the great rotation. The insiders with the big money selling their stock to the retail investors, they're coming in thinking, oh my God, this is great. The market's continually going up. They've been trying to pump it up. Today they couldn't do it as best as they could, and it was like negative 27 points or something like that. But they try to keep it where it doesn't look that bad, trying to get those retail investors in. They're doing the same thing with housing. The hedge funds, the investment companies trying to unload these homes at high prices to the everyday American. And this is what they do right before the entire system comes crumbling down. And this is what we're seeing right now. Now, of course, consumer confidence drops to the most in 4 months, and I can't imagine why. People being laid off, because you have to remember, all these layoffs, where are they getting these jobs? Where are they going to go? If every single financial institution is laying off, where are all these financial people going to go to get these jobs at these high prices? These high salaries, I should say. Where are they going to go? They're going nowhere. This is going to be the major problem. And when we see Bank of America lay off thousands of people, HSBC lay off thousands of people, Goldman Sachs start to lay off people, where are all these people going to go? They have no place to go. But again, the unemployment will probably come down again to 6.4%. And of course, another banker has been found dead, and again, we're seeing they're cleaning house. They're getting rid of people that might report or testify, and they're getting rid of more and more bankers, and we're seeing this pretty much everywhere. Now, if you remember back, this was back in 2011 when S&P downgraded the United States. Geithner, Obama, the Obama administration were very, very angry with S&P, and then all of a sudden there was a lawsuit. Well, now there's more information coming out, and from Standard & Poor's said a meeting between President Barack Obama and his Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner in 2011 was held right before they decided to press charges against S&P and sue them. So we can see this was definitely planned. It was completely in response to the downgrade in America, and they took action. So we can see what is going on here, because they need to keep the illusion that everything in the U.S. is going perfectly, that we're in a recovery, that everything in Europe has nothing to do with the United States. They can be in a recession/depression. They can have youth unemployment around 60%. The whole Eurozone could be at 12.2%. Countries can be at 30, 40, 25%. They can have debt loads that cannot be paid back. But this has nothing to do with the United States. But of course it does, because we saw this same exact scenario play out in 1929. Now, Obamacare is having a problem, and it has many, many problems. But what they're seeing now is that the sign-up rate for Obamacare health insurance is dropping off steeply in February. People are not signing up. And what they're noticing is a lot of these policies are not paid for. And they're going out and they're saying, why aren't you paying for your policies? What's going on here? Well, what they're seeing is that among those that are not paying, the reasons range from unwillingness to pay to inability to pay. Some customers who believe they can afford Obamacare plans because they are receiving tax subsidies to offset their premium costs are surprised when they realize their plans came with a relatively high deductible, because of course they're getting their subsidies. So I'll use an example here. Let's say their plan was $200. They're getting the subsidies. They only have to pay $75 a month or so, but they're realizing that they have a deductible of $3,000. So when they go to the doctor, they have to lay out $3,000 first before the insurance even kicks in. So again, and I've said this in the past, Obamacare is not for the people. It is not to protect the people's health. It is a cash grab. Taxes have been interwoven into this system because they need to raise revenue to pay for this debt, and they see that Obamacare is struggling. They're not getting the revenue they need, and this is why they're turning to the climate change mantra right now, that they're going to implement some type of tax, carbon tax. It will probably be on your electric bill. They'll use the smart meters to monitor how much you use, and all of a sudden you use a lot, so you have to pay more taxes. There'll be taxes on fuel, and this is how they're going to get around this. And you can see the propaganda for climate change is really out there, and they are really pushing this hard. Now, we understand in Turkey, Erdogan is having a lot of problems, and the opposition right now is giving him an ultimatum. So we're seeing this a lot. We're seeing this in Libya, where the opposition has given the government there an ultimatum to remove themselves. We're seeing that the opposition in Erdogan. Again, Erdogan is friendly to the United States because they put him in power. He's the puppet government. And again, you have to remember Turkey was going to buy Chinese missiles at the time, but of course the U.S. put pressure on Erdogan, and that was completely nixed, and they went back to the NATO missiles instead. And right now, The opposition is calling for his resignation after a leaked phone conversation posted on YouTube allegedly revealed Erdogan asked his son to turn millions of euros in cash stashed at several houses into zero. So again, all these people are in the same type of thing. They're scamming their country, they're stealing their money, they're moving money around, and they're lying to their people. And this is what the central bankers do and the puppet regimes do. And we can see this happening all over the world. Now, we understand that Iran is making a deal with China, and now China-Iran, once this deal goes through, China will be the biggest trading partner with Iran. And again, now North Korea is coming, and they're saying that, they want to broaden relationship with Iran, and they are discussing reviving and expanding bilateral relations with Iran. So right now, Iran is making deals with China and North Korea, both enemies of the central bankers and the U.S. government right now. And this is what we are seeing. We're seeing Syria making a deal with Russia. We're seeing Iran make deals with China and North Korea. And believe me, the central bankers are not liking this whatsoever. And of course, the central bankers, the U.S. government, the EU are all involved in the Ukraine at this time. They have sent in agent provocateurs, and the whole reason for this was to bring the country to its knees and to put them on the EU and to have them join NATO. And they really think they are going to get the entire country, because you have to remember the country borders along the Black Sea. It is a strategic location. They don't want the western part where Kiev is. They want the southern eastern part, and that's why they're out there saying, no, don't break up the Ukraine. No, we don't want this broken up, because we want the entire thing here. You see what I'm saying? We want the entire thing because we need this as a strategic location, because when we start the war with Russia, we need to have this location. And right now, Russia is out there, and they're saying, you know what? This entire scenario of what happened in Ukraine really looks like the Arab Springs, where they sent agent provocateurs into Lebanon, Yemen, Libya, Iraq, and all these countries, and they had the governments overthrown, the people were rallying, and then they put a puppet government in there. And you saw the same exact thing happen, and they're starting to say, you know what, there are a lot of similarities of what is going on. And Russia right now is telling the opposition leaders in the Ukraine, listen, stop demolishing the landmarks in the Ukraine. You don't have to do this. You don't have to topple the monuments. Just stop doing this. But this is all for effect for the people around the world. Do you remember back in Iraq when they brought down all the statues, and in Libya they brought down the statues? This is for the entire world, and especially the U.S. people to see, like, oh my God, look at the people doing. They're bringing it down. They do want peace, and this has nothing to do with it. These are paid people that were sent in there to do this, and this really doesn't help them at all. Again, if the patriots in the United States, the people who were for the Constitution, were rising up against their government, would they go into Washington and destroy Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial? Would they destroy all the memorials around the Washington Monument? Would they try? No, they wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be the reason. The reason they're for the whole overthrow of the government is because the people feel they're oppressed. They want a better way of life. They could care less about the monuments. But this is what's happening right now. Now, during this time in the Ukraine, the Ukrainians have been withdrawing their money because they're very nervous and scared. And they withdrew about 7% of all deposits in about 2 days. And right now, the central bank chief is considering stabilizing loans to help banks deal with the liquidity crisis, because there's just not enough money in the bank to handle the amount of money that's being taken out by the people, because they're very worried and they're afraid for their money. So everyone runs to the bank and they try to get their money out. Just like in the United States, when the collapse comes and people are rioting because they don't understand what's going on, everyone in the beginning they're all going to run to the bank, and they're all going to try to get the money out. And again, there's just not enough cash in the bank. And then when they can't get their money out, this is when people become aggressive. This is when fights break out and things really go wrong. And once they can't get the money out, they're going to run to the markets to say, oh my God, I have no money, but I'm going to go get food. I'm going to go get supplies before everyone else does. And you're seeing this right now in the Ukraine, and you will see this all in around the world as this collapse comes. Now, we understand that Russia right now is deploying ships. They're moving into the Black Sea and near Crimea, and they're putting the ships there. Troops are coming off. It's not for a war. They're protecting the area. They're also telling the people there that they can automatically become Russian citizens. Most of the eastern and southern part of the Ukraine are for Russia. They speak Russian, and this is why the United States, the central bankers, are very worried, because if they do split the Ukraine and something does happen, you will have the EU and the U.S. government controlling the northern western part of Ukraine, and the Russian people will be controlling the southern and western part, which borders along the Black Sea. And this is the part where this is really what the U.S. government and the EU really want. They want the whole entire nation, because it is a strategic location. And of course, Russia's out there saying if Ukraine breaks apart, it will trigger a war. They will lose Crimea first. We will go in and protect it, just as we did in Georgia. And the U.S. is out there saying the U.S. earlier issued a stern warning to Russia to keep out of the Ukraine, and the remarks were rebuffed by Moscow. And we can see what's happening. The entire thing is not what they thought it was going to be. And we're going to have to watch and see how this turns out. Now, but the U.S. and NATO now, what they're doing is they're saying, hey, Georgia, which also borders the Black Sea, why don't you think about joining NATO? Because you see what's happening in the Ukraine, and this would be a good opportunity for Georgia to join NATO, because they would like to get all the states bordering Russia and on the Black Sea, because then they would get rid of all the ports that Russia has along the Black Sea, and this would be a perfect strategic location to have when the war does start. And we can see that they are pushing this agenda, and they are trying to really do this. And right now, NATO is saying to Georgia that the door is open, you can join at any time. Now, while all eyes were on the Ukraine, there were other things happening around the world. And the United States, along with Israel, along with Saudi Arabia and other private Western Central Bank countries, they're preparing for something even bigger. And Saudi Arabia in recent days have massively stepped up support for the jihadists fighting the regime of Syrian President Assad. The officials said the Saudis have been pumping large quantities of advanced weapons to the so-called rebels, including anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles. More fighters are infiltrating Syria from the Dara region of Jordan with Saudi help. And then we understand this. This is what they did before. They brought all military assets into Jordan. They brought all military soldiers into Jordan. There's a CENTCOM base in Jordan. It's underground. Officers will handle the strike and the invasion into Syria, and we see this happening once again. And what's happening is the instructions have been given to the jihadists to attempt to reach Damascus from several fronts. And we can see they are preparing for a huge event in Syria, because the goal is exactly the same. They need to get into Syria and remove Assad. This is why, and they've tried with all different other techniques. They tried the Geneva II. They tried the UN saying Assad has committed war crimes. They tried with the humanitarian help, and they're trying many different ways to do this, and eventually what's going to happen is there's only going to be one way. There's going to have to be some type of false flag event, and then they will invade Syria, and this is going to cause other problems, because again, Syria is backed by Russia. They have a pact with Iran, and this is going to cause all sorts of problems. Now, the U.S. right now, and this is all in preparation for what is coming, the United States is also constructing runways for reconnaissance aircrafts near the border between Jordan and Syria to help with the operation against Syria. Now, why would they be doing this? Because they are planning something right now. They are planning something big. And of course, we've had Israel bombed Syria, some of the missile bases, some of the missiles that were being held on the bases, and just overnight on Monday, February 24th, again, Israel went to the border of Syria and Lebanon and bombed that area. Some of them were bases and missiles, and we can see they are paving the way to do something really big. And right now, calls for U.S. military intervention in Syria are starting to resurface. Now, what has happened is that they're trying to figure out ways to get into Syria, because you have to remember, they just can't go in there and say, okay, we just attack Syria, because Syria never attacked the United States. And the president just can't say, let's go in there. They just can't do it. It is a sovereign nation. Russia has their back, so they have to start figuring out different ways of doing this. And the United States is developing a battle plan against Syria that featured a sophisticated cyber attack on the Syrian military and President Assad's command structure, a report reveals. The New York Times reports, referring to a U.S. plan back in 2011, when the Pentagon and the National Security Agency first examined the use of cyber arms against Syria. According to the report, the spokeswoman for the National Security Council declined to discuss the details of our interagency deliberations about Syria, but we have been clear that there are a range of tools we have at our disposal to protect our national security, including cyber wars. U.S. officials were concerned about a new and untested tactic with potential to transform the nature of warfare. They also feared that such attacks on Syria air power, its electrical grid, or its leadership would prompt Syrian retaliation in the United States. So you can see what they're doing behind closed doors, and we'll probably never know this happen until after. They will attack Syria. They might hit the power grid, the lights might go down, they might be shut off for the rest of the world, they might have the troops move in and try to take over certain key areas in Syria, and when they get the lights back on, all of a sudden there will be some type of false flag event here in the United States. The false flag event would probably be a cyber attack on the financial institutions, because we understand, and from what we are seeing, that these markets are prime to collapse at any time. And again, the Fed, the U.S. government, do not want to be blamed for this collapse, because they've been building the propaganda that everything is recovering. The Fed has been tapering. The president has been out there saying everything looks fantastic. He just did the State of the Union in January saying the economy is getting stronger. So they will have to use some type of cyber attack to hit the financial institutions. And don't worry, the stock exchange, the NASDAQ, the BAT system all have a kill switch to help out so the markets don't go down too far. And all of a sudden you'll see banks closed, because again, they have the bail-in documents ready. They don't create these things if they're not going to use it. And of course they created these documents back in 2012. Then the Eurozone has them, Canada has it, Switzerland has it, Australia has it. They have done this on purpose. So you can see how they are ready and willing to go this route. And we have to remember that Syria, through CNN, with their intel that they have, they believe that, they know that American terrorists are being trained in Syria, and they are coming back to America, and they're radicalized, they're lone wolf groups running around, they're bomb makers. CNN intel also told us that Assad has been hiding biological and chemical weapons in the Alawite section of Syria, and we can see that information being used here in the U.S. And we can see that the elections are coming up for Assad in mid-2014, so they have a window here, and they know that this collapse cannot they understand that the collapse is coming, and they cannot maintain what is going on here, and they have to do something. And they realize they need to get into Syria, they need to get into Iran to keep the dollar propped up. They need to spread the debt. If they can't spread the debt, the dollar will start imploding, and they understand this. This is why they're in Africa. This is why they're in Thailand. This is why they're in Tunisia. This is why they're in the Middle East, trying to maintain everything. This is why they're in the Ukraine. This is why they're trying to get into Georgia. This is why they're in all these countries. But one thing they do understand, that when this collapse comes, they will need a war to cover up the entire thing, to allow the Fed to print money, to allow the whole United States to start manufacturing war and military assets again. And you can see this happened during the Great Depression when World War II started. They're doing the same exact thing. And we can see this is why they created the pivot to Asia. This is why they're trying to set up the strategic locations in Ukraine and in Georgia now. This is why they have the missile shield. This is why they're rotating military personnel and military assets in and out of the Philippines. This is why they placed the missiles in Guam. This is why they're moving the base in Japan to a different location to bring more sophisticated weapons. This is why they were talking about bringing nuclear weapons into Japan. They are setting up for this entire system to collapse. They are setting up World War III. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.